Hello guys, I was asked to make a review on Mikael, or as some people like to call him, the Super Saiyan. Yeah, it's kind of because of the way the art. So let's start talking about him. He is kind of an old player, so his kit hasn't really been updated, and this is why with a lot of the new players, he tends to be not as well appreciated. He does have an interesting kit, but has a few major flaws, and I'm going to be looking around how we can still use him nowadays, and does he still have potential value? So, first of all, he seems to really like being on the right side. His best position being right mid. He can also be put in front line, but as always, since he is an attacker, he will try to penetrate when holding the ball in front line, so you should ideally never put him there. And even midline nowadays, it isn't the smartest idea, but I will be going down on that. The reason why you would still be using Mikael is because you're a starting player or because you're monolite, where there he still has some potential value. His skill is Penetrate, increase attack power by 60% and decrease the inflicted damage by 50%. Who is really great, but the 15 minutes wait time is just a little bit too long. I mean, that's longer than an active pass. That's kind of bad. Army's Mark, increase critical rate, reflex, and max life within the position. That's basically his bread and bacon, making him useful on any line you stick him on, because that's great front. Not that much front, I would say. Well, even front, mid, and back line. So he's going to bring some value wherever you stick him and increase attack power and critical damage by 35%. Meaning with all of this combined, he's always going to be critting unless he's facing a crit resistant team or a team who decided to have a silk active. So this is basically going to be really nice. And recover spirit by 50% and decrease the inflicted damage by 30% with a penetration. So as you look at this kid, you're telling yourself he's very strong, he's got some nice damage, a decent line buff, but his one issue is he has no resistance. And this is what goes wrong every time. If someone attacks him, this skill won't activate, this won't activate. Critical damage and attack power is kind of nice, but not that great. And a bit of max life, it basically means he'll do damage to them, but he's gonna die. And this is why most people haven't been able to use Mikael, just because they put him midline, and everyone has realized putting him frontline wasn't that great of a move. So the problem is, even through his best position is midline, he has no potential back there. But if instead you decide to put him in backline, ideally right back for a little buff, but it isn't even that big, so you could just play around with the position as you feel. He actually can bring much more value. Now, of course, when we're talking about value, we're talking about getting the ball out of there while still buffing the line enough to be interesting. I mean, hey, I'm using Leia, and she doesn't even buff the line. So, I mean, there is positions for players like that. The only issue is, again, since he doesn't have any strong decreased damage, he's not really going to be able to take shots, so you need to try to move him away from the striker. Like this, he gets the ball and keeps penetrating. Now, when you're going to be looking at his kit, it isn't really that bad. There's a lot of different builds for him, and it's really going to depend your back line. So when we're looking at this, I've seen already a lot of people re-roll him, so I'm going to be talking about the different versions. The most common idea I've seen with Mikael is to try and give him a light dribble or a light crit, just to give him that little keel. A whirlwind, a thunder reflex stone just in case, and a lot of Gladarises were being used on him. I mean, it is honestly a pretty decent build. You can change it to if you want Will of Metatron, but you're kind of wasting for the crit. It's more for the action bar. There's a few different builds you can try, and it's really going to be dependent on your back and what line buffs you have. But one thing that he has huge synergy with is if you can put him on an Isilla line, because that's going to give him a 30% DR, and then we'll combine with his other skills. This is just going to be great when he's penetrating out of there. So this is one of the reasons why he should basically be in a backline with an Isilla, and Monolite is his best position. On top of it, he has a rival chain with Virgil, who we all know he's going to be there. I know a lot of people in Monolite are using Latios lately, so use a Latios ace, giving him the Monolite, I think 35% DR, combined then with Isilla's 30% DR buff, his genius buff, and now he's actually tanky enough to survive. So I would say in a monolite back only, you should use him. I know there are a lot of other options, and this is one of the reasons why he's kind of underrated. If they somehow worked around this genius thing and change it from with a penetration to with a penetration or when being attacked, it might have been much more interesting. But he just doesn't survive in midline. Frontline, his AI is going to suicide, but in backline, he does have an interesting kit. I hope this helps people understand the basics of how to use him. He just isn't a bad player. The problem is there's a lot of just better competition, and he can pretty much just work in backline. Have a good day, guys.